the way the city's like laid out, it's like just kind of on the Detroit River. I can't remember. I think it was the French who were there first. It might have been the English, but the French, I think it was, they built like a spokes sort of street layout, and so there's like 5 big streets that like outshoot, kind of like the spokes of a wagon wheel, from like the downtown of Detroit. But then I think the English came in and kind of put a grid system on top of it. And so it's just kind of really weird streets, like, because you have like these diagonal streets, but then you also have a grid. But in the winter when it snows, just talking about streets, the city doesn't really, well, when I was there at least, like the city didn't really plow the streets or anything. So it was just kind of crazy. Like I remember after one snowstorm, I think we pushed out like 15 cars out of the snow, like in like a day and a half or something. Just on, not like that's what we were trying to do, it's just on the way to appointments. We'd see people stuck in the snow like everywhere. But in like the Hispanic part of town, a lot of the Hispanics, like they work shoveling snow or cleaning snow, that's what they call it. And so they have like all the truck plows and like the bobcats. So sometimes like they would just be good neighbors and they'd come and they just plow their street, you know, and their driveway, and maybe in a couple other neighbors' driveway, just like out of the goodness of their heart, which was cool. The main streets that we did notice that the main streets that lead to the casinos, those ones were salted and plowed because the casinos want people to come in from the suburbs to like I guess get business or whatever, and so they would pay for it privately, but the city didn't pay for any of that. So it made biking interesting too, and walking. We take buses sometimes too. They'd come pretty irregular intervals and sometimes not consistently. But yeah, it was good. Yeah, there's a couple casinos. Detroit is known as Motor City, Henry Ford and things like that. So there's the big GM towers downtown. Ford has their headquarters in just west of Detroit in like Dearborn. And I know Pontiac was in Pontiac, but they shut down, I think. So I'm not really too sure about but all that. But there are a lot of, I guess there were a lot of factories. But yeah, since the decline and things like that, like not as much. I know that there's a lot of hope and optimism in terms of rejuvenating it in terms of like high tech. There's a lot of like young entrepreneurs like moving to the downtown area. There's a lot of problems I see like sociologically with some of those things. The history of Detroit, I think Detroit had the first freeway, from what I've heard, and like there's a lot of like racism and things like that go back to that, where they built a freeway because white people, I'll just put it in very generalized terms, white people who worked downtown wanted to live in the suburbs, and so they wanted a faster way to get into town, but at the same time they wouldn't approve housing loans north of 8 Mile, and so like the black people were kind of forced to stay within the city, and then the white people were able to kind of leave the city and expand and things like that. And so that's one of the reasons why it's still so segregated the way it is today. And one of the things like that kind of frustrates me when I hear about Detroit and how things are getting better is you only hear about like the white people like coming and starting jobs in the downtown, and it just feels like maybe they're missing half of the city, like maybe it's getting better in terms of economics for them, but I don't know if the quality of life is improving for the mass of people that we worked with. Our favorite restaurant was Camino Real, which is in Southwest Detroit. It was right by our apartment, and it's just a restaurant that they built kind of on the side of their house, but they definitely had the best tacos. So go to Camino Real. A little advertisement for them. But they're really cool. But Mexican town, like there's some restaurants, and they've kind of made it all nice to attract people from the suburbs to come visit. But it's kind of like Americanized Mexican food. It's not like the real deal stuff that you get more like in the parts that other people won't go to. I know there's a car show in downtown Detroit once a year, like in, I think, the Cobo Center, I think it's called. The Lions play down there, the Red Wings. I think the Pistons play outside in Ann Arbor. And this is the Tigers. We did go to a couple Tigers games on preparation days. You'll meet some like residual like Polish, like German, like European type of people who've like lived there for a long time. So you do get like these random like super old like white Polish people who are living in Detroit, and no one bothers them because they don't really bother anyone else, you know.